They say family is everything until you realize you're only part of theirs when it's convenient. The night before my surgery, I sat alone in the cold, fluorescent hospital room, phone gripped tightly in hand. I had waited hours for a call that never came. My only son had promised to be there. "Of course I'll be with you, Dad," he had said just a week ago. I wouldn't miss it for the world. But as the nurse prepped me for anesthesia, I found out through social media where he really was, sipping champagne in a luxury resort in the Maldives. Hashtags like #LivingMyBestLife and #DeserveThis flooded his stories, posted right around the same time I was being wheeled into surgery, heart heavy, eyes wide open. I survived the operation, but something inside me didn't make it off that table. Back in my empty apartment, I recovered slowly. Each day, I scrolled through my son's updates, speedboats, private chefs, sunlit balconies of some coastal villa he claimed to have just acquired as a second property. He had been successful, no doubt. His tech startup had exploded during the pandemic. And yet, as he flaunted his wealth to the world, I couldn't ignore the quiet truth. He had abandoned me when I needed him most. Weeks passed. No phone call, no visit, just silence, until a friend from my old neighborhood mentioned he'd seen my son's dream house was still unoccupied. A sleek, modern masterpiece tucked in the hills, rarely visited, barely lived in. It was supposed to be his sanctuary, his symbol of status. But that house had stirred something in me. And so one night I stood before the gates, not as a trespasser, but as its new owner. You see, long before my son found success, I was no stranger to wealth myself. I had owned businesses, invested early in real estate, and quietly built a fortune over decades. But after the crash, the loss of my wife, and a series of wrong turns, I chose a different life. Simpler, quieter, intentionally unseen. I had let my son believe the narrative he was comfortable with, that I had lost everything. He never questioned it, never dug deeper. Perhaps it made him feel superior, important, grown up. But I never stopped watching. I knew when he bought the house, and who he bought it from. I knew the deal fell through when his crypto portfolio took a nosedive, and he missed the final payment. I waited, quietly, strategically. And when it came back on the market in foreclosure, I made the move in full cash, under a trust name he would never recognize. So there I was, healed and standing in the very marble foyer he used to flaunt on TikTok. I took off my coat, ran my fingers along the edge of the grand piano, and smiled. The air still held the scent of luxury candles. It wasn't revenge. It was recovery of more than just health. The neighbors didn't recognize me at first. Why would they? To them, I was just the older gentleman moving into the billionaire's row. They whispered, wondering who I was. Some speculated I was a retired oil magnate. Others assumed I was some mysterious tycoon from old money. But no one knew the truth. That I had once been homeless. Mocked. Left out. Even my son didn't know, because he never came to see me again. Until one afternoon. He showed up unannounced, angry, confused. He had finally returned to show off the house to his new influencer girlfriend, only to find someone else's name on the deed and someone else's car in the garage. He stormed through the door. "What are you doing here?" he barked. "I could ask you the same," I replied calmly from the kitchen island, sipping a cup of tea. His eyes widened. "You bought this place?" "No," I said, setting the cup down. "I own it." He stammered, but no words came out. The influencer at his side looked between us, confused and awkward. And then I handed him an envelope. Inside were photocopies of the trust documents, title deed, and the notice of foreclosure he had ignored. "You abandoned more than a father," I told him. "You abandoned your roots, your promises. But I'm not here to fight you." He stood silent. "I just wanted you to understand one thing," I continued. "I didn't get lucky. I planned this. Every step. While you were chasing spotlights, I was building shadows." His face drained of color. "You taught me something," I said as I walked past him toward the sunlit patio. "That sometimes, the best way to be seen is to disappear long enough to become unforgettable." I left him standing in that living room, the same one he used to showcase his shallow victories. And as I sat outside, letting the breeze wash over me, I felt something rare, peace. Not from revenge, from reclaiming my worth. Now I live quietly, gardening on a terrace he never used, hosting neighbors who once judged me by my age and worn clothes. They now laugh at my stories, share wine on weekends, and ask for advice they'd never imagined I could give. The internet buzzes daily with hashtag luxury living, hashtag dream home goals, and hashtag mystery millionaire. People want to know who I am, but they never will. Because sometimes the real story isn't about the mansion or the money. It's about the man who rose in silence and healed by letting go. And to those watching, remember this. Never underestimate someone just because they stay quiet. Their silence may be louder than your pride.